Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Finance Committee. It is February 6th, 2025. It is exactly 4 o'clock. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. And going to the agenda, the first item on the agenda is the minutes of our prior meeting, and I believe everybody was present except for Fred. I don't know if you listened to it or not, but did you listen to the video? Okay. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 29th, 2025?
I move approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Patty? Is there any discussion on the minutes of January 29th, 2025? All in favor of the minutes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't see. I've lost the three folks zooming there.
I approve.
Oh. Roy, Kate, and Paul. Okay, that's 8-0. All righty. And we're on to the rest of the agenda, and I just want to say again, because we do not have as many microphones as we normally have in the other room. So please, if you're going to say something, I really want you to make sure you've got the microphone in front or move it around so everybody can hear, not just us, but the 3 folks that are zooming in, because sometimes when we speak, if we're not close enough to the microphone, they can't hear us. So we are doing today community development, and you can open up your booklet to page the community development is pages 87 to 97. So if you wanted to go into that area of the booklet right now before we start.
Mary, I'll introduce Paul, but just to kick it off, on page 89 in the summary of the Community Development Department. Bottom line.
Excuse me, is your thing on? Oh, okay. I think I'm getting deaf in my old age.
The bottom line change in the Community Development Department is a 5.47% increase. 29.7% increase in expenses, 4.5% increase in salaries. And I'll let Paul walk through the details, but just a couple of the fine points. If you were looking comparative to the prior years, there are 2 positions that moved out of community development are now in health and environment. And the big increase, the 124% increase in building inspection seems like a lot, but it's like small dollars. And I'm sure Paul will speak to it, but you might recall last year we got a surprise bill from the state. Weights and measures services. They used to be provided for free through the county and the town of Barksville. So that would be a reserve fund transfer for this year as well, because we found out late before we did the budget for 25. 26 is the first opportunity we had to add it into the budget, and the inspectional services seem to be the place to add it. So that's the main thing there. Other than that,
are those services required? Are those services required annually on all locations? Okay.
weights and measures. Mostly, it's got a scale or a gas. So if you're a food service provider and you sell things by weight, that'll get you scale certified. You provide gas pumps gotta be accurate. And it's not a fun job, I'll tell you. I was the assistant to the person who did it when I was in Chatham. You don't want to go around doing the diesel gas.
I can imagine.
You gotta, so it's something that's good to outsource. It's not a fun job.
It's not something you're signing up for?
No. Yeah, so good afternoon, Paul Ladd, Community Development Director. I don't know if, I'll give you kind of a brief overview of the department, and then answer any questions, but as many of you know, community development is made up of basically 3 divisions: planning division, inspectional services, housing. We staff a number of town boards and committees, including planning board, the zoning task force, community preservation committee, the Affordable Housing Trust, strategic planning committee, Tea Time Development Committee, Historic Commission, the Old Town Center Historic Commission, the Barnstable County Home Consortium, and the Cape Cod Transportation Committee. So our department provides services and serves on those boards and provides technical backup to those boards and committees. The planning division consists largely of work on land use development regulations and technical support to planning and zoning. We do detailed plan reviews for the monthly meetings, put together staff reports to help guide the board's decision-making, interpret the bylaws and so forth, regulations for them, attend those meetings. A lot of the work is done with meeting with homeowners, business owners, design professionals, again, guiding them through the process and stewarding those projects through the regulatory process. Long-term planning, that work really consists of updating and maintaining and implementing a lot of the town's management plans. So the housing mitigation plan, for example, the housing production plan, and updating, implementing, monitoring those things. The strategic plan is an important one. Housing division, we have a full-time housing coordinator. As you might imagine, that's a top priority for the town, and that's a big part of the work that our department does. Our housing coordinator manages all of our housing assistance programs that we currently run, and we'll be launching a few new ones in the coming year. We manage 10 town-owned properties, so that work really entails tenant relations, tenant liaison, overseeing, coordinating with DPW, property maintenance, processing monthly rentals, and really, as anyone knows, being a landlord, dealing with all the issues that come up. And then really important part of that work is just, and it bleeds over to the planning part, is just planning for housing, land use development, working closely with me with the zoning regulations to make sure. So really, we're trying to set the table for the work to come when we actually start bringing units online. So that's a big part of the work in my department. And last but certainly not least, the inspectional services. So building, plumbing, gas, and electric. We have one full-time building commissioner and 2 part-time inspectors who handle plumbing, gas, and electric. And obviously they carry out technical reviews, plan reviews, and do their inspectional services every day. I will say the nature of that work is getting more complex, changes to state building code. The town has adopted new stretch energy code and so forth. So, and a lot of our work in town, a lot of the work is renovations. So a lot of time is needed for the inspectors to walk through the plans, really help the property owners and the contractors understand the code. And when you're getting to redevelopment and additions, you got old things that fall under old code, new construction, old construction. So I will say over the last few years, that work has become more complex. It does take more time for the inspectors to be in the office, taking calls, meeting with folks. And I want to take a minute to recognize the inspectors, because the Nauset High School building project is a huge project. Obviously, that covers multiple towns, but the burden and the responsibility has fallen on Eastham. And I just want to say our inspectors have done just an outstanding job. That project is not without its challenges, and they have done an exemplary job, and they really haven't missed a beat with the rest of their day-to-day stuff. And that's a big job. It's complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. They've been up there as much as they're needed. They're trying to facilitate everything, do things on time, make sure the project moves forward. But I just want to recognize they've done a really, really great job.
Have you had to pay them overtime
No, they're making it work within
within their time period?
Yeah.
was extra. An amount put into the project, high school project budget for inspectional services. I don't know how it. Get worked back to these.
I think that was for the building permit forms.
For the inspectors.
I think that's how we get reimbursed for that. Things to building permit, is how we pay.
For the inspection. Yeah, yeah, it was negotiated.
Very, Paul said.
Paul?
Paul, first of all, thanks for being here. You talked about new programs, housing programs coming online in 25. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so we currently run the rental assistance program, an emergency loan program, and we will be rolling out a lease to locals program, which actually Rich has been really, Rich and Rachel, our housing coordinator, have been more closely rolling that out, but the lease to locals program. And then we're also looking to roll out an accessory dwelling unit assistance program. And that program would provide funds to offset, well, it'd be pre-development funds to help folks figure out if you need a septic plan or a building plan or architectural plans, feasibility. So pre-development, and then post-development, if it results in creation of an ADU, there would be funds to offset the cost of construction. And the lease to locals program is really aimed at really providing funds to property owners to get them to rent year round as opposed to seasonal.
So Paul, that's analogous to what P10 does with.
Yes, I'll let defer to Rich on that because he's really been. Yeah, it's pretty much the same program. It's a subsidy paid to existing short-term renters who convert into a year-round to make up the differential from what they might lose by doing a yearly rental.
Terrific. Thanks.
Have you received any feedback on the lease to locals from potential landlords? Because it's such I mean, they're all great programs. I listened to that meeting. I feel like lease to locals, you could just flip a switch.
Yeah, informally, we've gotten a couple comments, not a lot, because we've had to develop the program guidelines. Although it's very similar to Provincetown, we just don't take what other people do, and we like to rehash it, make sure it's restand, so that's a little bit. We also engaged with another town, see if we can partner in it, and it looks like we're going to be able to, which is gonna save us about 35% on the administrative costs. So that was worth the effort to make that work. And that going through all that, just this beginning of this week, we issued the RFP. So by the end of February, we should have something issued, ready to go with anticipated April 1 start date.
Great.
I have a question. I see that one of your employees, Phil Burt, left and that position is vacant.
No. Our new planner, Jackie O'Rourke, filled that position. We changed the title of it. It was community development coordinator. We changed it to community development planner, just to really reflect what the nature of the job was, more akin to the planning division. And working with the regulatory board. So yeah, that position's been filled.
So
Time it was vacant, but was relatively recently filled.
yeah, okay, so
But the current position fills within the slot that's been allocated there, so substantially almost exactly the same salary.
and did we lose Phil for a reason?
He decided he had a job offer that he couldn't refuse. It was a good move for him, but we'll say he enjoyed working here. He liked the work. He just,
Are you finding that we lose people because they can find a position but never pay other places?
I don't see that in terms of going to other towns.
Yeah, on the Cape.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a certain towns that can't compete with the private sector salaries, so,
Yeah.
But I don't, that hasn't been my experience of
Okay.
like losing to other towns. I think we have a good system here. Our salaries are competitive, and I actually think we have
a lot of advantages that
Mhm.
other towns don't, as far as we can offer to the staff, so.
We're gonna bug ourselves a little bit involved, but, I think we've got a stable organization, goes a long way for retaining employees. We do have competitive pay. I don't think we're out by any means much over anybody else. We're, definitely in the ballpark. In any given year, we might be off to one town or another, and another year, we might be a little over than yet another town.
Mhm.
So pay is competitive, benefits are pretty much the same across the board most towns. But I think it goes down to a strong HR department, strong department heads, stable organization, and the capacity within our town hall to handle stuff. Most towns where you see turnover and perhaps some dysfunction is they've got, one person that does 5 different things. That's not a recipe for success. So I want to thank the finance committee, the select board, and the town. When you go through and look at these staffing, we were properly staffed for the size organization. Not, I'm sure here and there at any given point in time, we could use somebody else or an additional person. But we're certainly not understaffed, grossly understaffed, situations that you do see in some other small towns.
What's the situation with our flood zone? Have we been I'm not sure what the word is. Do we have more land that's under flood zone than before? I mean, have they done
The flood maps have
Yeah,
not been
updated?
So FEMA does not update the flood maps very often. The last time they were done were 2014,
Mm,
and it's a huge undertaking. So, officially, we don't have any more cataloged areas susceptible to flooding, but does that answer your question?
mhm.
The town does participate in a program called the Community Rating System, the CRS program. And that's a program aimed at increasing awareness of flood issues and trying to adopt higher regulatory standards so that we're better prepared. So for building compliance, site development regulations, environmental regulations. And it's really an incentive-based program. So how it works is the town agrees to take on added responsibilities, and again, related to education, outreach, higher regulatory standards, so forth. And in exchange for that, and that entails carrying out, annual tasks and updates and monitoring, but in exchange for that, all property owners in the town are eligible for up to 15% discount on their flood insurance. And so that's kind of like the give and take of it. So that's kind of the hard.
It doesn't make any
reward.
difference
The
what
soft
company you
reward
have
is
there.
really, fostering better education, better construction, trying to get people to not construct and rebuild in the highest flood zone areas, so forth. So that's a good program. We've been in that for a number of years. Last year, we increased that discount went from, I think with last year, the year before, we went from 10 to 15% because we earned we get an audit basically every year. And we added some additional capacities to that program. So we got a higher rating and that increases discount. So I always like to plug that flood insurance is available to anybody, whether you're in a flood zone or not. The discount depends on which flood zone you're in, but that's
Glad
an
you mentioned
important
it.
program.
Yeah, I was gonna mention it, so, just a benefit to our taxpayers, sometimes we do things and then you look at them and they're a cost, right? This is a good example of, because of his efforts and his staff's efforts. You're able to A, obtain flood insurance, and B, get it at a discounted rate, which is a savings to them. So it's not always a pure math calculation on the tax burden. It's, always comes down to what you get for it. It's an example of a benefit, so that's. good job.
So how does somebody that wants that 15% deduction, what do they do to?
I think it's just part and parcel of the rating.
Yeah, that's handled through your insurance. So whoever you handle your insurance agent.
So they can
process that.
find out that the town has a 15%.
Yeah, so part of the outreach that we're obligated to do is every year we send a letter out to all properties in the flood zone, notifying them of this program and the benefits and so on and the discount.
Oh, okay.
And we're also obligated to send a reminder to all the local realtors,
Mm.
insurance agents, reminding them of this. And again, part of what we do as we meet with folks about their projects, if they're in the flood zone, we try to educate them about that and make sure they know that the discount's there and that they should get it because they're entitled to it. But it's, all the paperwork's done through, the town's not involved in that part. It's all done through your.
But if my house was in the flood zone, I would have received this, something in the mail.
Yeah, I get a letter from him
Okay.
every year.
I'm sorry?
I get a letter from him every year, because I got two.
Yeah, so we send it out to, if your property is, and so even if you got a corner of your property, you get the letter.
Mm,
Technically, all the insurance, everything's related to the structure of the house,
mm.
but we notify all the properties.
I have another question. What does SEMRBOA stand for? It's on,
Samboa.
yeah,
It's the Southeastern Massachusetts Building Officials Association.
no, okay. Southeastern Massachusetts. Building. Organization, did you say? Building
Association.
Association, organization. And that's what that's what we pay for annually, it could be.
Yeah, there's membership, and
There's a
that's
membership.
the building commissioner belongs to that. It's,
Mhm.
and that's really. The building officials, professional organization. All the inspectors are required to do. Ongoing education, retain. Continuing education credits, so Samboa is for the building officials,
Mhm.
that's the organization that offers those classes,
The
those
classes.
credits and so forth.
I missed well, I shouldn't say I missed you had an excellent zoning presentation at the library, maybe a week or so ago. And I think it started at 3 o'clock, and unfortunately I had to leave because I had another meeting.
I saw you leave.
I'm sorry, you saw me leave?
Wasn't your fun.
Because I had a library trustee meeting at 4 o'clock, so I couldn't stay any longer. Are you, at some point, not today, we should be having you back to discuss the various zoning requests that you're contemplating as far as the warrant is concerned?
Yeah, I'm happy to come back and do a presentation just whenever the schedule allows for which.
Yeah, probably not tonight, but probably after next meeting, we'll have seen most of the departments.
Yeah,
We start talking about, probably want to start hearing about the articles.
right.
Since we're talking about that, just want to put in a big plug for Paul. I mean, I don't know if you'd call this your pet project, Paul, but I don't know how many years you've been working on this, but all the things that happened last year and this year are years of work and effort. So it's super important to have continuity in the office, because if you have people coming and going, it would be years even further before we ever got this to town meeting and got these changes through. So I don't, just as a primer, Paul, if you want to talk about what you'd be talking to them about at the upcoming zoning changes.
So. This has been really 10 years in the making. We've been doing a lot of planning, a lot of analysis, a lot of studies being done. And thing I like is it's always nice when there's a method to the madness, there is a plan. So we've been implementing the plan over these many years. And one of the things that has come up as recommendations and best practices has been to implement what's called form-based zoning into our zoning bylaw. And I'll just keep this high level. Essentially, form-based code is land use regulations that focus on the built environment, as opposed to standard zoning, which really focuses on the uses of a property and segregates the uses. So industrial here, residential here, that. That elements of that are retained, but it's really focused on what is the land gonna look like? What's the development gonna look like? The architecture, where the parking is, the landscaping, how things relate to each other. And it's really a best practice because it's trying to get consistency in the look and feel of the town. And obviously this is centered on our Northeast Ham Commercial District, Route 6. And so, as we know, we're trying to redevelop that area. We have the Teton properties. And so over time, we want a predictable development pattern that'll yield the results of the type of town village center we want. So it's really geared towards that. Again, I'll go into further detail, but high level, that's what we're trying to implement. We're trying to amend the zoning to put these form-based code elements into the zoning, not scrap the whole zoning. We're keeping actually a lot of it. The majority of what's there is there. It's good. But we want to add in these elements that will, again, hopefully it's meant to clarify. And you just, I look at it, it's like a recipe book. You put in the recipe of what the development should be. Building heights, roof forms, materials, this and that, and you build it according to the recipe. The regulatory process will be a lot easier because it's predictable. There's not a lot of deviation.
Wiggle room.
Yeah, so it's meant to, again, predictable results over time, but also to help the regulatory process run smoother for the applicant and for the board. So the expectations are set. And again, there's always room for, we don't want cookie cutter either on development. So there's always room for flexibility, but that's really what it's geared for. And this is kind of the framework for what will come after with Teton and Town Center Plaza. We want the zoning framework it's set so that when we do an RFP and put the vision out for what we want the developer to do, they're gonna look and see, okay, they already got their zoning in place. They're basically telling us what they want. So if I come in with a development that meets these expectations, I'm not gonna have to have an uphill battle against it. And I know that I'm not gonna have to go in and ask for a lot of waivers and a lot of exceptions because they're telling me as a developer what they want to see. So that really sets the framework, like I said, for what we want to see over time. And obviously that carries over to the private properties out there. We have water. What will come in the future with wastewater? These properties are going to get redeveloped, and we want to set ourselves up for success so that we get the end result that will be good for East Ham and our community and what we want for our community character and so forth. So I guess that's the kind of high level. When I come back, I'll get more of the detail.
Got it? No, go ahead.
Well, I have a question. First of all, I just want to say I read it's a draft dated January 10th. East Ham Zoning Task Force. I think it was online. I thought it was really great to read because it was so user friendly. And I know you're talking about some of these.
The summary report.
Yeah, it's a summary report. I have a question that's kind of related. Are we working on a new strategic plan for 2025 to?
We are. As I said, my department works with the strategic planning committee. We're basically in the middle of that update process. Got a little off track, to be honest, because I had to prioritize some of the zoning stuff. So the guiding principles of the existing plan, the core goals remain unchanged. What we're really doing is we're trying to simplify the plan a little bit because the current plan was a little too dense. We found trying to work with it and trying to monitor it and implement it. So we want it to be a plan that reflects the goals of the town, but we also want it to be workable and be a management tool that department heads and the town administration and select board can use to kind of set the overall goals of what should we be working on, what are the priorities. So we're trying to, a lot of the content is really kind of, or I should say a lot of the changes are really kind of changing the structure of the plan so that it's more user friendly. It's not as dense. We have a lot of stuff that really got to the weeds with action items that drill down into the weeds, but really not needed for a strategic plan. We want to outline what are the broad goals, what are the strategic focus areas, and then higher level actions, just so then when this goes out to the public, they can understand like why are we working on this? Well, it prioritizes, and a big part of that, what we're trying to do is use the various other management plans that we have, housing plan, harbor management plan, hazard plan, so forth. All of those plans exist. A lot of work went into them. They all have recommendations and action items. We don't want to lose that. So what we've been trying to do is go into all those plans. What are in there, what are the highest priorities from those plans, pick those out and put them in so that all these plans nest in together. So when you're looking at the strategic plan, you're gonna see these are the highest priorities from all the other plans, and then also look for the crossovers. So where we see a project that's going to be boat ramp replacement, that's great. And there's several of those we need to do, but which ones we do this boat ramp replacement, it's also it's an infrastructure fix, it's an ADA accessibility fix. It's a wetlands restoration project, it's a water quality, so a lot of these projects overlap and we wanna cross-reference. That helps us getting back to like using this as a management plan and a tool to guide where we should be putting our time and resources. That helps us justify, we went for this project because it checked 5 boxes as opposed to this one, which checked 2. They're all important, but. So that's what we're trying to revamp the plan so that it's more a tool that can be used for that kind of.
Yeah, because it's a great reference book, like, I wish everybody in the town and would read it, because there's a lot in there, and it puts a lot of the pieces together of what the town's doing. So
Yes, but I appreciate that.
the-
Hopefully the new plan will be even better, but and more user friendly.
I have
I
it
will
marked
say-
in my inbox, in my email, and I'm always going.
We will have,
Let's
so
go
the
to-
plan won't be, the full plan won't be totally updated, for a while yet, but we will have, an update that will go into the town meeting warrant that will basically explain what I just went through, hopefully a little bit better concise, but. So there'll be information about what's coming for that.
I mean, I know it's a lot of work, but I
Yeah.
just wondered.
But like I said, it's been good over the past 5 years. We have internally, as staff has used it, and Rich has integrated into the budget process. And so it's good because the staff is referring to it and that helps us
Yeah,
prioritize and
I've told
center our
friends
budgets around.
to
what we
read
should
it,
be
yeah,
doing.
I've told friends to read it and that didn't even know it existed, and they were like, what, it's great, it's really helpful to people.
And I appreciate that.
It is worth the time, it's worth all that work.
I don't see any hands, oh.
Mary?
Roy,
Yeah,
Roy?
it's just a question with respect to building inspection expenses. In fiscal 25, it was $5,550 and projected to be 12,471 in fiscal year 26. Is that due to the weights and measures? What's the increase in cost due to?
$6,500 for the weights and measures assessment from the state that we're finally picking up.
Okay. That's what I thought it was.
you were on page 97, is that
89.
89?
Yep.
96 in the book,
Yeah, that's what I was looking at, yeah.
and you said note 2.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the 6,600 for fiscal year 26. Are there any other questions on the community development section of the budget? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Now, we're going on to the other part of our discussion. And that's the public safety fire department, and that's pages 110 to 120. Are we getting anybody from the fire department?
Yeah.
You counting you or?
Maybe there's an emergency. I think they're probably. Thank you.
Well, here we are. Hello.
Hello, everyone. You thought there was an emergency?
No, we didn't wanna interrupt you guys and. We weren't sure about the seats, so we're watching from next door to here. Come on.
Yeah.
So I will, let the chief and deputy, or new deputy, I'm sure Lisa will introduce him, go through the details, but I'm starting on page 112, the summary for the fire department, and not a lot of changes. Um. Bottom line increase is a 1.54% increase. 2% on salaries, a reduction on expenses. I'm sure Lisa will speak to this, but the challenge, I think, here, or the reason for these low numbers on the salaries is a reduction in the staffing count of paramedics versus EMT, which has a cost associated with it. And we also took out on the expenses are relatively, I think, probably exactly the same, except we removed an assessment to it's called CMed because of our shift to the sheriff dispatch model that you'll get an update on next week from the police chief. That, we'll turn it over to deputy and chief.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. I do some familiar faces for me,
Yeah, so maybe we should just go around.
right? So Lisa Albino, I'm your fire chief. I've been with the department for 38 years, 39 years, and have moved up through the ranks, so. Thank you.
Female fire chief.
And you have an associate with you.
Yes, so this is, my deputy, that we hired in September.
Is that Eric?
This is Eric Littman.
Yep.
Eric came to us, through a couple different, avenues. He's had, some great experience, and I'm gonna let him.
Yeah, so my career began on Cape Cod for Katuah Fire in 1994. I worked until 1998 and then went on to my career at Las Vegas Fire and Rescue for 21 years. Where I served as a captain, training officer, union president. Retired in 2018 to come back to our roots in Massachusetts. Worked for the Medfield Fire Department for 5 years where I served as a captain. There before becoming the director of the Massachusetts Firefighting Academy in January of 2024. Until I had the opportunity to apply and bring my career full circle back down to Cape Cod. So and was hired, was lucky enough to be selected to serve as Chief Albino's deputy fire chief and started in September 30th of 2024. So just excited to be here and learn and go from there.
Do you live on the Cape?
I do. I actually we've already purchased a home in Eastham.
Oh,
We closed on right off of Governor Prince. We closed on December 16th.
ooh,
So,
very good.
Yep, we're very happy
we're all-
to have him in town.
so yeah.
This is the first time in the history of the department where we've had the deputy and the chief
Living in town.
Yep.
So
Nice.
it's a
And that
whole
was-
new
and that
learning
was a-
experience for all of us.
And that was a goal for both the chief and I, so that, you know, we're available since we're the only two executive staff of the department. And have to, take command of incidents. We wanted to be available and be able to support each other. And by living in town, we're able to do that and have a very, fast response time to any incident,
Mhm.
which is a priority for both of us.
It must be interesting to go from Las Vegas to Eastham.
I was more than happy. 21 years, supposed to get on one of the busiest engine companies in the city. I've had my share and everybody else's, so yeah, I'm very happy to be back on Cape Cod, for sure. So, yeah. I'm not young anymore.
So I know,
Oh, okay, I didn't know whether you wanted to talk some more about
like,
your.
you were
Go
Oh,
around.
yeah, we're gonna go around, yeah, we'll start with Mira.
Oh, you know me.
Yeah.
And I'm Fred Guidi, I'm on the Finance Committee and the Capital Projects Committee.
Steve Kanacha, same, finance, capital projects.
I'm the newbie on the committee. I've been with the committee for about 6 weeks now.
okay.
I'm Patty Anderson, and Lisa's dogs and my dogs are good friends. And I'm on the finance committee.
I'll do the zooming, folks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Paradise. I'm a member of the Finance Committee. I'm also the chair of the Search Committee, and I'm on the Visitor Service Board. So, and I'm at home recovering from 4 weeks now from total knee replacement. So you'll see me maybe stand up and walk around. It's no diss on anybody. It's just I have to move my leg.
Really understand.
Paul? Paul?
Hi, I'm Paul B. Brown, member of the Finance Committee, and more importantly, I'm a neighbor to both those people who are going to talk today. Lisa lives up the street, and I don't know where the deputy chief lives, but I'm off of Governor Prince as well.
I'm on 1065.
On Governor Prince?
Yep.
Okay, well, Lisa and I are on Mary Chase.
Roy?
Hi, I'm Roy Maroli. I'm a neighbor of the chief, also on Ireland Way.
I think everybody must live next door to you.
Right, so.
Yeah,
Paul's
we
on
are.
Mary Chase, we're not neighbors, well, we are somewhat. but
Somewhat.
Roy's probably my closest neighbor along with this guy, so.
And I'm also on the Strategic Planning Committee.
Hi,
I'm Mary Shaw, and I'm co-chair of the Finance Committee. I'm chair of the Community Preservation Committee, and I'm on the Board of Trustees for the Eastham Public Library.
everybody's busy.
Hi, Peter Wade, co-chair of the finance. I'm on the school building committee too, the high school building.
Oh,
I sit
okay.
up there
Yes, we are up there.
and capital project committee.
So go with your introduction and we'll go through it and then they'll have questions.
So right now, right,
I'll pick out specific line items if you.
okay.
I'll pick it up.
So as you know, the fire department we're cross-trained both EMS and fire. So everybody has to have either an EMT or a paramedic. We, as Rich has stated, we have lost some paramedics. They have moved on to other departments.
When you say other departments, what do you mean by that?
We
Other
had
towns or?
other towns, so we had two recently leave for Harwich. We had one leave for Barnstable. And
This is pretty common practice.
Well, that's one of my concerns.
It's a concern of all. I believe I speak for the chief and myself when I say that recruitment and retention of paramedics is the #1 challenge of all fire departments, especially on Cape Cod, if not across the nation right now. And that's that shift, looking at different contracts, that paramedics are basically looking because they know they're a high commodity right now. And that's mostly the reason why you'll see that shift from department to department, depending on salaries, benefits, living, where they're living, if they're living in the, something opens up where they're living.
In the
versus-
towns or near the towns.
Exactly. So it's no doubt it's the #1 challenge that we're facing.
we don't have a residency requirement. So with that, we have a number of personnel that do live out of town, which is they're not available to us on their off hours. So they're looking to maybe move back to closer to where they live. We also, with COVID, they shut down the paramedic programs because they couldn't get into the hospitals. So there was a 2-year period where there was no paramedics being schooled, trained, everything. So we're all now trying to play catch up.
Just so for the newer members, just to lay the land a little bit. I think, what we do when we do collective bargaining is we do comparatives to neighboring towns and comps. And I think we have an attractive collective bargaining agreement and salaries in respect to our actual comps. But we have communities, particularly in Barnstable, that doesn't have a municipal or a town-based fire district. They have fire department. They have independent fire districts that are outside of the town and exempt from Proposition 2.5. They have much more flexibility and they're just run by a prudential committee and a fire chief. And so you have situations where they have paying 90-95% for health insurance, where most towns are 65-75%, and they're able to jack up the salaries, which so we do have people moving to those districts. But I think, like you said, if you're living in Harwich, you wanna work in Harwich because that's where you're gonna get your call back.
So we're,
Rich, just a quick question. This is Kate. Thank you for explaining that. I was professionally a recruiter, and if you could talk a little bit more about, I think Eastham does a wonderful job of benchmarking everything and being competitive. So I don't want people to leave this meeting with the impression that somehow the Eastham job is not as appealing as other jobs. In fact, I would venture to guess that it's more appealing because of the um, the ability of our town to be so appreciative of its employees. Is there any strategy that you guys are looking at to recruit and retain folks moving forward, knowing what's happened in the past?
I'm gonna turn that over to the chief.
so we do a lot of recruitment. It's the retention part. And that goes along with the salaries. What we're able to, you basically bring someone in from a lateral transfer, that helps. We do have that in the collective bargaining agreement. And like Rich says, when we go into contract negotiations, we see what everybody else is paying in other towns. And we've been really lucky here in town where we're able to be in the middle. We also look at, a lot of other things. Right now, I have 2 interns from the high school that they come in during the day to get a feel of the fire service. That program in and of itself, I have 4 firefighters that are full-time with us that came from that program. They live here in town. So we're doing a lot of that recruitment and the retention part. I think we're getting there. I am not hearing of anybody that wants to leave right now, which is a good thing.
I think what you'll see with the chief next week as well, the police chief, is very similar. It's hard to compete with the Calm Fire District, the highest fire district, and some of the places up Cape, especially if you're living up there. So correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely.
We're looking for the right kind of person who appreciates what Eastham has to offer and we have to offer, being a progressive professional organization at the department level and at the town level.
Right.
And so again, going to the staffing that we provide and the support we provide to all the department heads, it all kind of goes together.
It all goes together and it goes with the culture next door in the department and the morale. And if people feel appreciated, which is what we try to come across, because we appreciate all the work that they do, they'll want to stay. It's hard when we're competing with even Chatham. I just saw an ad for Chatham Fire and they're giving a sign-on bonus
So
of
I was just gonna ask you.
$10,000. That's hard to compete with.
But I think another way we're addressing this internally is there's 2 challenges with Eastham. Obviously, with the expense of living close to here or buying a home here has exponentially risen, over the years, especially after COVID. But with that being said, the chief has taken a proactive stance in applying for federal grant money to be provided to us so that we can send our EMTs that we currently have to paramedic school for those that are willing to go. And what that money will do is fund the cost of them going to paramedic. The cost, because once they go out of paramedic school for the didactic, then they have to do a practical portion where they have to ride along and they have to get so many skills evaluations so they can just take the exam, the national exam. So the chief has addressed that, to answer your question, internally as well as externally, to try to promote even our people that we have today, our members, to make it appealing for them to go to paramedic school, get their certification and to grow within, so.
It's 18 months from the start of school until we can actually get them certified to be in the back of the ambulance as a paramedic.
So
Are
the
they-
chief and I- No, worst comes to worst, the chief and I are still medics, so.
Are
Right,
they
and-
still, are they incentivized that if you pay for their schooling, do they basically sign a contract that says we'll stay with Eastham for, 2 years, 5 years?
So
Or is there any incentive for them?
that is, so that, I believe we came up with that language for, if the town was going to have to pay. I'm waiting to see if we get this grant. And then once we get this grant, we need to figure out if we can legally do that.
Mhm.
But we did have, then we had one where it had a promissory note, right?
Yes,
Which was forgivable after, I think, 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years.
If somebody stays long enough, they're not required to pay back
Yes.
whatever the
Correct.
costs
Yeah,
were.
that's pretty standard.
Right, so we get a return on the investment, right, that we're investing as the department, in our people, there's an expectation of return.
Of course. Yeah. That's great.
So-
Thank you.
No problem. I mean, right now, we did 2,300 calls last year. Out of those, that's also fire and EMS calls. There were 959 transports. We do have a billing company that does our billing for the insurance. We haven't looked at our rates since 2014. I do know what it costs for
You're talking about ambulance?
the ambulance calls, transports to the hospital. It's based on what tier you are as far as what type of call, so an ALS call is roughly about $1,900 is billed to the insurance companies. We certainly don't get that amount of money back because it's set by Medicare and Medicaid. For an ALS 2 call, which is our most highest priority, that's over $3,000. For our BLS, which is a basic life support call, is $1,000. And then there's a mileage cost that goes along with that. This is meant for the insurance companies to pay for. Basically the coastal billing does our billing. They do balance bill, but if the person says, I don't have the money to pay for it, that gets basically abated. We don't send anybody to collection. It's not meant to add to someone's medical expenses. But with that, everybody's expenses have gone up, like ours have, for all of our medical equipment, and the soft goods that we have to buy. But we're taking in less money, so we're looking at that fee structure, coming up, and we haven't, like I said, we haven't increased our rates since 2014.
So just so the committee knows, these ambulance fee receipts go into a special revenue fund. They're not part of the, don't go to the general fund, they're not part of the operating budget.
Right.
It's what's called a receipt reserved for appropriation, so town meeting can vote it for any lawful purpose. But internally, we've kind of restricted it for the capital budget of the fire department, and that's how we pay for our leases on the ambulances. And now that we have had the third ambulance, which I think you'll agree was like that, had to have happened. It's putting a little bit of strain on the ambulance fund, so looking at the rates, it's probably appropriate at this time, but the one caution is, I just don't know what's happening in the federal environment, right? A lot of our reimbursements are Medicare and
Good luck.
Medicaid. Right there, I'm cognizant of how impactful changes might be to that program, so if that is significantly impacted, that's going to definitely affect the funding of the fire department.
One of the,
Do use, I'm sorry, I think it's $1.5 million as a other available fund in the general fund operating budget, basically offsetting the cost of these salaries that we see from the fire department budget. So 1.5 for the operating budget plus the cap.
and I'm also always looking for grants that I can get. Right now, last month we were notified of a grant, that we received for $15,000 for a firefighter safety grant, which came out of the state of Mass. So I'm in the middle of right now purchasing some equipment that is earmarked for, that won't come out of the budget, which is great. I put in, as the deputy said, the federal grant for paramedic class, for 2 people, and also for, new cardiac monitors. We are almost at end of life for our cardiac monitors. They have astronomically increased. So for me to purchase 3 monitors that I need, it is $150,000,
Oh my God, 50,000 each?
basically, yep.
They have all the required monitoring that you would basically find in an emergency room, all on the monitor. And obviously, there's a huge cost that goes along with that, everything from carbon dioxide, expiratory measurements to O2 saturation to 12 leading kgs. That's all contained within that one monitor. So naturally, it's not cheap.
It's not cheap, and it's a requirement of the ambulance.
So
So
if you
to
have
be-
3 ambulances, so you've got 1 in each?
yes, you have to have 1 on each, and the Department of Public Health, under the Office of Emergency Medicine, they're the ones that tell us what our minimum equipment has to be on the ambulance to be able to run the ambulance, whether that be basic life support or advanced life support. So if we don't have an advanced life support, we don't have that equipment, we can't run
Run the ambulance.
as an advanced life support. And with the hospital being as far as it is, that would not be appropriate for the citizens of East Hampton.
I have a question you were talking about, and I see you have 2 vacancies right now.
So I don't have 2 vacancies right now. I have 1 vacancy.
Oh, okay,
This vacant position has been filled. One of them has been filled.
okay.
He's a brand new firefighter. He's a brand new firefighter EMT. These 2 vacant positions were the day shift firefighters.
What is day shift firefighter?
So that's versus the 24. So the firefighters that we have are working 24-hour shifts. It's the best way to staff. It's the most efficient way to staff without, obviously, additional manpower. There's 2 day positions that are allocated to supplement that rotating schedule.
So
That
they
would
would
be
work
there
a
every
day, they would work a 10-hour day, 4 days, but rotate 1 on at a time. So it would bring my shift staffing during the day to 6. It would drop it to 5 if we were at full staffing. Or it would be, so in the summer months of July and August, I have a minimum staffing level that I have to maintain of 5. So that would be an additional person for the day shifts, which would bring it up to 6, which would help being able to get that 2nd and 3rd ambulance out the door when we need it. In the off months, I have a minimum staffing of 4 that I have to maintain. And out of that 4, 1 has to be an officer, so it has to be a captain or a lieutenant. The other 2 have to be paramedics. So the 4th one is usually an EMT. If we had these day positions, then we would be up to 5. Those day positions are not appealing to people. I can't get people to agree to it. And with the way the structure is, these day positions, if a position was open on the floor for a 24-hour,
They would
move up. So right now I have 1 member that we're waiting for his retirement to be complete. So I moved this day person up to a shift so that I have 20 people right now on the floor. So I have 1 vacant day position right now.
This is an area, Lisa's brought this up to me and likely, well, it's a management practice here, you'll work with Lisa and the union. To probably change this up, how we bring it, and just to put you on notice, not in this budget, but going back to something Lisa alluded to a little earlier. And Eric, people are not living in town like they used to. You had staff, we had 16 staff people, you had 16 people that pretty much lived in town or adjacent town. Now that they're not available for callback because they're in Harwich or Centerville or Sandwich,
Some other place.
unfortunately, the only solution to that is to increase staffing.
Is to what?
Increase
Increase
staffing,
staffing.
Oh,
because you can't rely on
Oh, right.
callback.
Right.
And so, I used to have this all the time in Yarmouth, there's a big kerfuffle about overtime. It's like, well, the alternative to overtime is to hire more people.
Mhm.
So I'd rather, pay half again, to have the person we need when we need them, instead of a whole again for a whole other person, plus all their benefits. So, I don't mind the overtime, but it's just a matter of, is it actually gonna be filled when it's needed because of.
Mhm.
So, I think that's the trend we're seeing locally in a couple of departments. And so just to put you on notice, not in this budget, we'll be entering negotiations or an agreement next year. So whether it's next year or sometime after that, I think that rubber is gonna meet the road, and that's something that we're talking about. in the future.
Well, possibly increasing staff. So that I can make sure that that second and third ambulance, that the fire truck goes out fully staffed. When it needs to be.
That should decrease overtime. Increase staff.
Not necessarily, it depends on our emergency calls and callback, and when someone's off on vacation, do I have to fill the shift? There's still gonna be overtime, but it's,
The big driver overtime, where you can make a difference, is when you can do an analysis, which we've done in the past, and we'll do again, especially if we're talking about adding people. But when you have concurrent calls and you've got callback, does adding that person eliminate the callback on a concurring call? So you got two calls at the same time, right? That's where you can say it.
And the other concern, the other variable in that is that third ambulance, it's there, it has happened already. Where it's just the chief and I, because those ambulances have already been committed with the personnel that we have on staff. Third call comes in, the chief and I are gonna go on that call because, that's our primary role, is to serve our citizens. And as paramedics, we end up transporting. Now the town is void of executive staff, right? So that's one of those other, ancillary issues with not having the staffing to roll out that third ambulance.
and then we need to, we need to safely, for our personnel. Make sure that the fire engine is staffed properly.
No point rolling it with one or two people.
Right.
You're not gonna be able to do much.
It will go, but we're not able to accomplish our mission as effectively and efficiently as possible
Right.
if we're understaffed.
Because then unfortunately, we'll be relying on mutual aid companies to be coming in. To be able to perform their duties, right, which is time, right, and for us. Time is everything, whether it's a fire, an EMS call, time is our enemy in a sense. Where we need to get there, locate, confine, extinguish a fire, try to keep it to the room of origin. Obviously, that's much more difficult if we can't properly staff our units, get them there in time. To be able to locate, confine, extinguish that fire to the room of origin, if that makes sense, or on a heart attack, that's, a myocardial infarction. That's what we learned way back when is time is muscle. The more time, so those are all those factors that we think about when we're having challenges with staffing that third ambulance or staffing that engine or ladder company.
I'm just wondering, given the age of the people that live in town here. And the fact that it's the folks are getting older and older, that more and more people are getting older and older, and the percentage of people that are in the older age bracket. That's not many other towns don't have that same demographic. And
So Orleans does. Orleans has the highest age median out of So Orleans is dealing with that right now.
And we're pretty high up there too.
We are.
Some of us, Mary.
I'm sorry. Well, I'm in that
But
bracket.
yes, no, but yes, it's a reality for sure.
Yeah, but I'm saying, given that situation, the needs for what you're doing must be larger than a town that has a different demographic.
Of course.
Yeah, well, and they tend to be, this goes to a couple of things I wanted to make sure, and I don't wanna take your thunder.
No, go ahead.
But, not to get off the overtime too quickly, the other driver of overtime, that I was going to give Lisa credit and our HR department credit. Is IOD, injured on duty, staffing is a big driver of overtime because that person's not available to us, but they're still on our staff, we're paying them, but all their shifts need to be filled in at overtime. So supporting people to be able to return to work is key, and then if they're not able to, coming to a resolution to end the IOD, and not when I say end it, I mean, amicably so that they can get what they need, whether it's a disability retirement or otherwise. So bringing things to resolution is key, and Lori Barr and HR and Lisa have done a great job on that. And so right now, we don't have a lot of IOD. We did a few years back, which was really hurting us.
Right.
So when you see that we do a good
Back
job
issues,
on
stuff like that.
overtime, a lot of that's luck. When you see that we're over on overtime, a lot of that's bad luck. So, something bad happened.
Right, it's someone's bad luck, it's someone's bad day. Our overtime is really driven by the amount of emergency calls that we have. I have some great staff over at the firehouse, and we're really moving forward with being able to make sure that the appropriate piece of equipment gets out the door with the appropriate staffing. Because we did have the turnover, we were able to hire, so since I took over in September, I've hired 3 new firefighters to fill the vacancies. These are local firefighters. The 3 of them are headed off to the fire academy to recruit class for 10 weeks. So I'm gonna be without them for 10 weeks, but they're headed out next week, and we'll have them for the busy season.
I was just gonna say,
When I go
better-
up to.
They'll be back May 2nd.
Better now than
Day
later.
full
staff.
Better now than later.
And in the budget, we budget for, I think it's 1 per year to go to recruit school, but I'm gonna make it work where we're gonna send 3. Cause there are contractual agreements, but that also leaves me 3 less people, so I have 3 groups that will only have 4 firefighters. So if someone takes a shift off, I have to fill that. So that's what drives the overtime. But when we hit July 1st this year, I'm praying we're at full staffing.
The other thing I wanted to mention, and the chiefs and I haven't really had a chance to flesh it out much, but I think you've heard of this idea. And then actually Jerry Saracel on the select board's been interested in this. There's been a push at the state level with, especially in older communities with a lot of runs in small towns like ours. What is that, 2-hour round trip to the hospital?
Yeah.
I don't have 2 hours, 2.5 if you want to clean up. So is there a possibility to change the regulations under certain circumstances that you decide to transport something? They don't necessarily need to go to a trauma center, or they don't need to go to Cape Cod Hospital. If we go to an urgent care that's in, say, Harwich or in Orleans. Orleans might be challenging because of their seasonality and but that's something that's a state and regional issue, healthcare issue that would have to be worked out. So there's a lot of public policy that has to happen before it gets to us.
Right, because right now, we function under, the state and the state protocols, and the state protocols and the point of entry basically says you will go to a hospital. You can't go to, because that's where my medical direction comes out of, is Cape Cod Hospital. So there's no medical direction that comes out of the walk-in facilities. So
it's just not an advanced life support point of entry per the state mandate.
Mm.
That's why you're beginning to see across the state, you're beginning to see standalone ERs. Right, that they're standalone emergency rooms, where now that is a point of entry. There are none that I know of on the Cape just yet.
Mm.
But it's simply those clinics are not a point of entry, and that's mandated not only by the state, but by governing federal regulation as well for ambulances. JCO is their governing body that also has standards for ambulances across the nation of points of entry that they can go to.
It's like having a pop-up.
They're standalone emergency rooms, so that they're able to function as such, and those are and that's been some of the solutions for situations that Outer Cape,
Distance.
similar
distance
distance,
issues.
exactly.
Lisa, did you want to speak to any particular expense line items in your budget?
So,
One,
the dispatch one?
no,
I have a
Lisa's
question
got
on
challenges.
Vector Solutions. What are Vector?
well, that's a new one.
Okay, so Vector Solutions is, basically a management program for the filling of shifts. That the firefighters use for who is able to take shifts and where it goes, how it goes out. It's all, basically, it's an app that they use. We increase that because we're trying to embrace more technology within the department, and we have added what they would consider that they call it the Check It program, and that's for all of our daily checks that go on with each piece of apparatus. The weekly check, everything has to be checked to make sure that it's up to par, which means we have what we need. It's in working order. So instead of doing it on a piece of paper, we're moving it to online in the cloud. But with adding that is an added expense. We're also looking at this particular program to put all of our SOPs, SOGs, memos that would come from either the deputy or myself. Instead of doing it all paper and having paper everywhere, this will be able to go out to the staff. They will be able to acknowledge that they've read the SOP and all that stuff. And then we know that they've seen it and read it.
What is SOP?
Standard operating.
Standing operating. Okay.
So all our standard operating guidelines, all of our memos, if the chief puts out a memo, we want to make sure that our members have seen it and they acknowledge it and they understand it. So it would be a centralized location where all of our documents, all of our base documents would hold our standard operating guidelines, our policies and procedures, town policy and procedure. All of those documents would then be centralized so they could access them. And if we needed to even change them, our standard operating guidelines, once again, we could just send it out. They could acknowledge that they understand them because those are obviously very important for us, along with what the chief mentioned with the Check It program, being able to check all the apparatus, because some equipment is mandated that it has to be checked, it has to be documented, everything from our monitors that monitor carbon monoxide to the air packs that they wear in an immediate dangerous life and health hazard situation. All that has to be documented, so and be kept. So that's the other piece of that file storage.
A lot of information that's got to be retained.
Killing a lot of trees.
Yeah.
one of the things I was asking Lisa to address, and I'll start it off, is the vehicle maintenance. Because of our financial position this fiscal year, we've tried to level fund as whatever we could, and we did level fund repairs and maintenance. Historically, that's covered some minor repairs to each of the apparatus and perhaps one major repair. But the challenge we have now is, we have more repair incidents and they're more expensive. That being said, I'm not suggesting that we change the repair maintenance budget, but it's one of the more challenging parts of our budget to manage. And I think that you perhaps will see a request for a reserve fund transfer this year because of that. Doesn't mean necessarily we should increase the budget, but I think in the future, this is an area that will see some increases.
So the ladder truck is our newest piece of equipment, followed by 2 ambulances. Then we've got the other 2 engines and the 3rd ambulance. So the 3rd ambulance is due to be replaced. It came out of the budget. I believe it was last year because we just purchased it. So there is such a backlog on ambulances, on fire apparatus. There is a 3-year wait for most vehicles right now. Chief Keen, my predecessor, was able to find an ambulance company out of the state of New York that is able to get us an ambulance in 9 months, $200,000 cheaper than what it would have cost us if we had gone with someone here in the state. It was going, so our last ambulances, we purchased 2 for close to 500,000, I believe. When we went to put this last ambulance out for bid, it was 500,000 for 1 ambulance and a 3-year wait. So it's very hard for municipalities to sustain that model. So he was able to find, and it's gonna look exactly what we have. I'm assuming, and I can't assume, but because we did see it, it's built the same way. This company is trying to get into
the business.
into the business. That's due to be here in August.
Wouldn't everybody else be trying to get?
Because they've already committed to some
someplace
other
else.
companies based on their specifications for ambulances and fire trucks. So there is a long wait for equipment, which means we have a little bit of aging trucks, shall we say. So I've got 2 fairly new ambulances. We'll have another new ambulance coming in August. We have the ladder truck. Granted, that is 2 years old. We've had some repair issues with that that aren't under warranty. We've also, the other 2 engines, we have one in particular, 156, that's going to be aging out. It's gonna be over 20 years old. I know that got taken out of the budget or the capital. We need to consider putting it back in. And I know it can't be put in the next year, 2 years, but we need to think about putting it in that 4 or 5 year mark so that it comes up. And my reasoning for keeping the engine is if one of the other ones goes out of service, I then have 2. I also need to look at the ISO rating that we all have. And if I drop an engine out of our fleet, I don't want our ISO rating to go back up. We've worked very hard, the town has worked very hard to get our ISO rating, which is our insurance rating, to get it down from an 8 to a 4.
And that was part of, the fire department's effort, but it couldn't take those efforts without the townwide water system. The townwide water system obviously has a tax impact to property taxpayers, but they've saved on some insurance because of the ISO rating. The only thing on that, Lisa, and this is not a near-term thing, but one of the things Dan and I had talked about with the removal of that engine, and we should follow through, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and then we do what we gotta do. But there had been talked about perhaps a regional, a 2 or 3 town reserve engine. And does that model work?
Go ahead.
I'm already speaking on that, so I've experienced those ideas. The largest issue that when a shared services agreement takes place is the cost of maintenance for who's gonna incur the cost of maintaining that one piece and the availability of that piece.
Where is it gonna be located?
Where's it gonna be located, and then what happens, which invariably it does, you got it, where you have both departments or three departments needing that.
Same time.
Who gets it? What's the priority and how they get it? And so it starts going down a rabbit hole, when they've attempted to do these shared services agreements. And I haven't known or experienced anybody that's come back and said this worked great.
Let's do more of this.
The bottom line to all of that is, you know,
We're
the
looking
things
at
we've
it.
been trying to do for the last 3 years,
Mhm.
and you need a willing partner.
Mm.
And it could be the best idea in the world, let's assume that's gonna be great,
Yeah.
but if we don't have anybody else that's gonna agree with us, that's gonna be great, then it just doesn't matter.
Right, but I also think that it's worth a conversation.
Yeah.
And all avenues need to be looked at.
Well, and I think that's
Maybe
the
what the
key
best.
thing we've been really good at,
Right.
fire department, police department, town administration is. When we go to town meeting, you know, people wanna know that we've at least tried these things, looked into them, and if it doesn't work, but
Yeah.
we gotta try, right?
So the vehicle maintenance and repair line is my biggest challenge, along with my medical expenses, because our medical expenses for everything that we have to put on the truck, the prices have increased astronomically over the last couple of years, like everything else has for all of you, it has for the budget also.
Mary Rose,
Oh. Roy, thanks, Peter.
Hey, Roy?
I just saw.
Yes.
Yeah.
Question with respect to, if I understood it correctly, we have one fire truck that's over 20 years old.
It is
Is that correct?
approaching, it's 19 years old, so
Okay,
we're approaching that.
how reliable is that truck?
It's very reliable right now. But my fear is as it gets older, we're going to be putting more repairs into it.
What's the normal length of time for?
20 years,
Oh.
20 years.
So that's where we are.
20 years is the standard end of life,
Mm.
you know, where as what they would say is a first line piece of apparatus, which that apparatus has specific equipment on it for motor vehicle accidents, jaws of life, cutters, all of that extrication equipment is specifically dedicated to that piece of apparatus.
Did you have another part to your question, Roy?
No, that scared me enough.
You're not alone, Roy.
A couple questions. Are there benefits that we should be looking at to provide new hires that would help us to get new hires and to retain new hires? You mentioned signing bonuses for Chatham, $10,000. Is that common across the Cape here?
It's becoming common, but I don't know if I want to go down that route right now.
Mhm. No, I'm just asking if other towns are.
Like I said,
It's a feeding frenzy right now.
Yeah.
I mean, like Hyannis, like, Rich alluded to, Hyannis is offering 90-10 insurance to new paramedics. Nobody's offering that, right? Is that sustainable? You know, especially like Rich talked about, that's a fire that's a water district.
It is for
They-
them because they're a district. not separate.
Because they're a district, right?
Right.
Do we believe that bonuses in themselves is gonna, that might get the recruitment?
Mhm.
That doesn't guarantee the
Yeah.
retainment,
Right,
right? I
right,
think
right.
it's just what the chief talked about is, I think that we have really beginning to foster a culture at Eastham Fire. We have incredible members of that department. In my experience of working for multiple different departments. And I think it's largely in part to Chief Albino's leadership, just in the short time that she's been as the fire chief. And so with that being said, there's just a strong culture, and I believe in any organization that it's culture, that's what keeps people, right? That they know that they're valued. And the chief's done a fantastic job. I followed in her footsteps with that. I think it's already played itself out with the 3 that we've hired that we're about to send to the academy that are local. And they're here not because of a bonus. They're here because of the department. The location is in part, but I think it's really about the culture that we have at the Eastham Fire. And also what the chief said with the interns, one of them, I don't know if I'm at liberty to say, is the police chief's son, who wants to come over to we say the red side and the blue side, you know, and I'm actually kind of proud to say that. So, and so was he for that matter. But that's the goal, right? Is to I think because of that culture that the chief has already developed and is fostered, that I believe we're gonna be okay, just based on, as long as we stay in the middle, and we stay competitive with other towns.
And that's gonna be looked at when we go into the contract negotiations. as well.
Another year, is it another year?
This September, but we'll start in September, but I think being able to keep our salaries competitive with the size departments that are similar to us, there's no way that we are gonna be able to compete with the water districts.
Right.
But we can compete with our neighboring towns. And I think looking at all that and being able to maybe provide the training. Someone wants to go to paramedic school, being able to provide that training for them, where they don't have to put the cost of $15,000
Outlay
out
themselves.
before they even get a job.
Providing folks the opportunities, I think, goes a long way. And then, but to your question on the signing bonuses, I think, in some cases it's warranted. And both the police and fire have done an exceedingly good job being very selective in their recruitments, especially as of late, because the fit is the most
The
important
fit
thing.
is the most
And when
important.
you offer a $10,000 signing bonus, my opinion only, but I think you guys agree, you get into the mercenaries.
100%.
And you sometimes have a negative impact. on staff.
I agree. Yeah.
But I have another question on benefits. Under the family support package, which was passed in 2019, I believe, we are providing residents with pre-K education and childcare. And I believe we have, at least I've had some conversations with Laura, we are providing some of that to our employees as well, even though they don't live in town.
Absolutely.
Is that, is anything like that helpful?
Sure,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I mean, they
100%.
tend to not have, it depends on what your spouse does.
Oh, right.
Yes.
But you're working 24-hour
Yeah,
shifts, so that child, it's not a Monday through Friday childcare issue, right? But it's still an
It
issue.
would still, yes,
And,
absolutely.
So the best example of this is we hired an IT person recently. Loves the job, loves the pay, loves the opportunities. And I was talking to him and he had to come in late a couple of days for the childcare issues. I'm like,
We have,
did you know
we provide
yeah,
childcare.
you know, we do that for you. It's like, no, it's like, all right, well, let's sign you up. And now he's just mind blown. He can't believe that we do that.
So why didn't he know about it?
Didn't ask. I'm just kidding.
But I think it's being, it's fostering those conversations with our employees and getting to know our employees.
Right.
Providing them the benefits that we can. And I think that we have the best that we can have right now. We have the best of the best, I think. So.
Jerry's got a question.
Jerry,
Hi, yeah, hi. Sorry to jump in and go backwards. Lisa, Mary moved before I wanted to ask. But one of the things that was raised at the Massachusetts Municipality Association was the idea of drop-offs not at a hospital. But I heard something that was interesting here. There's a potential push to try and get the state to move, but there's a federal reg that requires it. So it's really not a state issue, but now it's a federal issue in the sense of trying to find some.
It all has to do, yeah, it all has to do with our treatment and transport protocols.
Yeah.
So I'm not,
And I know that JACO, which I believe is I'm not sure if it's a quasi or it's actually a government, department.
Yeah.
I know they have a lot of, influence, if not standards, to be followed. And the state usually, mirrors what those recommendations are.
so the JACO is for the facility
Mm-hmm.
and what they are able to accept based on what they have for
Correct.
staffing.
Right.
Their model, so we have to go based on what the Department of Public Health.
Yeah.
Office of Emergency Medicine is telling us what to do.
Perfect example of that would be the Cape Cod Hospital just was awarded a level 3 trauma.
Trauma, yes.
Right, so JACO is involved in that, right? But obviously that affects our ability, that ancillary effect is that we can now go there, versus flying them out
Right.
as an option, right? So that's how that affects our abilities of where we need to transport and where the state mandates where we need to transport to.
Yeah, the only reason I brought the question up is whether we being the town of Eastham or the select board wants to try and really push our discussion we had with the lieutenant governor to try and see if we can do something to cut the 30, and it was P-Town and Wellfleet that were raising it. They're a little bit more further than we are, whether or not we make that push. And I didn't know if that, let's say that could happen. Does that put a lot of extra stress on our EMTs to decide whether this injury or this illness requires us to go to, let's just say you could go to urgent care in Harwich, or have to go all the way to Cape Cod? I mean, are there some, if we want to try and push this way from a lobbying standpoint, from the point of view of the town, does it create some extra issues for the EMTs in Eastham that we should consider? Maybe this might not be a great idea, even though it might save a little money if it happened.
So, my first gut reaction is yes. But we also follow protocols that tells us with this, we do this, with this is where we go. And that's our basically our point of entry plans. The issue is much bigger than the town pushing the lieutenant governor to do that, because the medical centers, even like Fontaine, which is a very big medical center, they don't have the capabilities to handle emergencies in the same way that we can handle them. So they can't start IVs there. The ambulance can. They don't have cardiac monitors for someone. So for Cape Cod Hospital to bring up those facilities to an emergency room capability, I don't think they're going to do it.
Right. Okay. No, listen, I appreciate it. It's, I know enough to be dangerous rather than to be helpful. So, so that's why I asked.
Very good questions. Cape Cod Hospital, because they do these, they are part of the walk-in facilities. They can handle the basic of the basics. And if, we hear it every day. Harwich Fire goes to Fontaine Medical. at least 5 to 6 times a day to take the person, a person out of there to take them to the
To
hospital.
go to the hospital, right?
Cape Cod because the medical centers are not capable of taking care of sick people.
And they don't wanna even consider taking on the liability of treating a patient that they don't feel is anything more than the common cold cough,
Right.
whatever that may be. I can tell you, if you're looking at alternate, I would say, answers to the influx and the transport, I have been exposed and been involved in things like a nurse call line. Now, that's something that would have to go, you're talking about the state level, where there is a nurse in, which would be county dispatch, right? That what they do is they do a higher level of triage of those lower acuity calls. So that they find and they deem that it's not necessary to send an ambulance. They've actually done things like rideshare programs so that they, and that obviously has to have a funding revenue to pay for that.
Right.
But there's everything from that to community paramedicine. There are a lot of different avenues to try to alleviate the stress on the EMS system, especially with elongated transport times.
Yeah.
I'm with the chief. If you put a paramedic, we've been paramedics for over 30, I think you've been longer.
We don't
for
need
over
to.
30 years. If I'm given the choice and I even have a question, I'm going to the hospital.
Going to the hospital, right?
Do you know what I mean? I'm not, because we like to say that we always treat our patients if they were with our own family. I'm not going to a quick care. I'm taking my mother or father or brother or sister or my wife. I'm taking her to Cape Cod Hospital.
Yeah. No, thank you. Those are things, straight answers. I appreciate it. And it really changes the look of, okay, is this something, how hard do we push and look into this? And so, I know enough now to say, okay, I'm going to sit back for a while. Thanks.
I have another question, Matt. The closure of that, the fire training program I think it was in Harwich, they closed the whole program?
In Barnstable.
Barnstable, yeah. So what does that, how does that affect your training from that perspective?
So there are a number of different ways. For the basic recruit for firefighter 1-2, we have to send them to the Mass State Fire Academy, of which they have an ancillary campus in Bridgewater. That's a 10-week program. That's the program that these 3 firefighters are leaving for on next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, believe it or not. And we do not have access to them for 10 weeks.
So do they stay there? They live there?
We have to, yeah, based on the contract, they don't have any dorm facilities. Based on our contract, we have to provide them with lodging. So we have
So
to,
that increases our cost completely.
It's already accounted.
it's
Yeah,
accounted
no,
for.
I'm just saying that when we had the program in.
They were still sending them, so the Barnstable Academy is basically a local academy. Due to contractual agreements within the agreement between Eastham and the Eastham firefighters, they attend the Massachusetts Firefighting Recruit Training Academy.
Right, but Barnstable, they had to close down,
Right,
so they don't provide
the training.
firefighter 1-2 program that these new firefighters need
To get their pro board
to get their
certification.
certifications and stuff like that. Barnstable County Fire Academy still has some programs that they will bring to your department, but they're not the programs that like the state can bring.
Because they're environmental issues.
Mhm.
They're not able to perform live fire exercises at the Barnstable Academy anymore.
It's
And it's that,
completely,
yeah.
the only thing that they can provide to us is a mobile smoke trailer that we have once a year that comes and we set it up at the DPW. So we do evolutions, but it's only a basically a smoke-filled tractor trailer.
It's not live fire conditions.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what these these three are going off to. They'll provide, Barnstable County will provide some classes. But they're more of a classroom that's continuing education. Would maybe be a fire officer class, a fire instructor
It's not as
class.
intense as.
Well, it's all classroom,
program.
so there's no hands-on practical part that I can send the shifts to Barnstable, because that academy has completely shut down.
Mhm.
So-
How safe is the equipment that the clothing that you're using? I've read all sorts of information
So,
about some of that
there's
clothing
a-
causing cancer.
Right, so there's a big push with the gear, the structural gear, with the PFAS in it. They're just developing gear without PFAS. One of the other, big things that, we moved to, this past year was that everybody have 2 sets of gear. So, and that gear needs to be washed and dried after each fire.
Is that something you do?
Yep, we do it right at the station. We have a gear extractor, which is basically a big washing machine that spins all of the contaminants out. When it's washed, we found that we all have one primary set of gear, and when you do that, it takes multiple days for it to dry because we did not have a gear dryer. I was lucky enough that I have a neighbor in my development that came to me and asked me, I would like to make a donation to the department. What do you need? What do you need? And at the time, I'm like, I would love to get everybody a second set of gear, so that if their primary is being washed and dried, they can now
Something
put
else.
another set into service. I was able to secure an $80,000 grant that we were able to purchase second sets of gear for people. It was actually funded through the Firemen's Association, but that was a private grant. So everybody over in the fire station right now, all the firefighters have 2 sets of gear. So that there's a policy that when you go to a fire, that gear comes out of service, gets washed, and we also received a second donation that we were able to purchase a dryer for our gear. So these sets of gear are good for 10 years. There's a 10-year life expectancy on them. After that, they have to be taken out of service. They cannot see any type of live fire. So with that, we've staggered the dates for people. So that our bunker jacket, the coat, and our pants, everything has a date, but those were the big pieces of equipment, and for one set of gear, it's over $4,000. The industry is out there and they are making PFAS gear. They're just starting. So,
Massachusetts was the first state to outlaw the manufacture of
Clothing without
clothing.
PFAS?
That's probably what you saw in the news, right? As of 2028, I believe. They cannot, the state of Massachusetts can't accept any firefighting gear within the state that is manufactured with PFAS chemicals in it.
So this is another example of, like our routine with most capital items, where we try not to have big replacements all at once, once every 5 or every 10 years. We'll phase in of the next few years into the capital plan, increasing amounts so that whatever the date
At
is,
some point,
10 years
they'll all
down the
be
road,
replaced.
that you have a ability to replace it.
so that everybody has, so we had some employees that we started last year, and it didn't make sense to get them 2 sets of gear with the same date. So
Yeah.
we're phasing in their second set, so it's a fine where you know, when you order that stuff, and the gear prices have gone up astronomically. So, but we are working on that, with this, last grant that I got from the state for $15,000. We're gonna be purchasing new structural firefighting helmets so that everybody has a compliant helmet in date. And they have a second helmet. So I'm working to try and
Update everything.
Make sure that everybody has compliant stuff for their first and second set, but also doing it fiscally responsible with grants and not having to purchase, $80,000 worth
All at one
of gear at once.
What's
So
the status of the HVAC system at this? At the
they are working on it.
I mean, last summer, all I could see was air conditioners hanging out all the windows.
Thank you
They're drilling
to
right
Rich.
underneath us as we speak.
Every day,
Oh, really?
right
Okay.
now, so the HVAC system is being
that's-
replaced, and
Thanks to Rich.
thanks to Rich.
It's been a story. But the nice thing about that, well, I don't know, most people think it's nice, but I think it's nice, is it's an electrification project. So, which is the direction the state's going, and we were able to use, I forget the numbers now, a good amount of money, like maybe 50 grand or so out of our green communities designation to fund that. And again, because of the practice we have of funding maintenance accounts by facility every year, we have the resources to cover what's not covered by green communities. The bad news on that is, I had in the capital plan, so this actually might be a change that we'll discuss when we get to articles and wrap up the budget. I think it was $500,000 or $550,000 in the capital budget for town hall HVAC. So I was hoping that this would wrap up in time, that I'd qualify for a green communities grant round for the spring. It's not gonna happen. So I won't qualify for the spring, which I was counting on for the police department. So we have to defer that to the fall, but what I would probably ask the finance committee is, I had designated, I think, the 550 for town hall HVAC, and I might I'm not gonna change the amount. But instead of town hall, I might just say town-wide HVAC. So whether it's the police that needs to go for first, if they're the priority versus the town hall, we have money for whichever one we need, depending on the severity of need, once we get to the point of actually being able to do the work, so.
Well, I'm sure you'll appreciate the air conditioning.
But in any event,
They will.
one building or the other, and we're never gonna get both, but one building or the other, whether it's the police or the town hall, is going to be a green communities project. Funded project.
Yeah.
The electrification, are they encouraging or requiring air source heat pumps?
Yes.
That's part of it,
You're asking about heat pumps?
air source heat. pumps.
It's a big project, and like Deputy said, I'm at my desk and I can hear. I'm like, what are they doing down there?
We're not complaining.
But I'm not complaining, I'm not complaining, and I'm like,
Well, price to pay.
yeah, I mean, it will be, it will make that building a lot more comfortable and efficient in the summer.
Yeah. Are there any other questions from other folks on the committee here?
I have one more question. I might have missed it. Do you have anybody in the paramedic training now, or are you waiting for that
not.
grant?
And you not, I'm waiting for the grant,
You're
but
waiting for the grant.
right now, my hopes were, and this is a challenge that we're also, everybody on the Cape is trying to overcome. There's one paramedic program on the Cape, and that's through Cape Cod Hospital, Cape Cod Community College. And that's part of their associate's degree, that if they decide they can do an associate's degree in EMS or an associate's degree in fire science. They're just doing the, they're just opening up the registration for paramedic class to start in September. But with that, they changed the prerequisites. So now there's 3 classes that prospective paramedic students have to have before they can even register for paramedic program. So that's the challenge I'm trying to find, is who has those requirements and who's willing to go to paramedic school.
It's definitely gonna be a huge challenge, because when the chief and I went to, we both went to the paramedic program at Cape Cod Community College back in the day. You just applied, you interviewed, and you went. Now they're requiring A and P, math, and one other class. That's obviously, not only does it lengthen the time, if, for instance, we had somebody that doesn't have that, but they wanted to go.
They have to take the course
Have to
before
take
they
it.
even apply.
Exactly. It throws
We
a huge wrench.
Nothing is easy.
literally just found
When there are
out
other
about it
programs
3
off-
weeks ago, and I'm
Yeah.
like, how am I gonna make this happen?
Where there are other programs off the Cape that don't require that. And they can still, at the end of the day, you're still a paramedic. If you get the required hours of training, do your ride time and take the national test.
It's a revenue generator for Cape Cod Community College.
Well, no,
You
because
said it, we didn't.
because what I was told was they can go for free, provided they don't have a degree, and I'm like, but I gotta get these kids started.
Yeah, well,
And
it's,
I call them
yeah,
kids, I need to get these firefighters started.
yeah.
I
And
just,
it's really, like, we try to promote, because being a paramedic is a serious position. You are administering medications, you are reading EKGs as if you were a doctor, more or less, pre-hospital. So you have all those responsibilities under the medical control of the physician to make those kind of life-changing decisions, administer those medications, read that EKG, right? Put a breathing tube down somebody's throat. So for 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kid to want to take that on, that's a huge responsibility, right? And so it's our job to try to promote that, say, hey, we did it, we loved it, we still love it, but
They have
you
to
know,
be ready for it. They have to be ready for it.
absolutely, right? So this just throws an added challenge.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, you gotta take 3 classes before
Before
you can even get
sign
in.
up, yeah.
yeah, so we're working with the staff over there, and, if I can get 2 into school in September, we'd be in really good shape. So, we're trying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other
Any other
comments or questions?
Thank you.
And congratulations to both of you.
Thank you, and I really, thank you for all of your support for the department. It becomes very appreciative of me, the deputy, and the staff over there, that we have what we have, and it doesn't go unnoticed. And I appreciate being able
And Rich,
to
for that matter,
get,
he sets us up for
it
success.
sets me up for success.
You guys
So-
are rock stars.
No, well, it's not without the support of everybody here in town and the committees in
Yeah.
town, so thank
You
you.
guys are great.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Eric, yeah.
Anytime anybody wants to stop over, come see us, okay?
We can listen to the HVAC.
Exactly, just listen for the jackhammer.
Okay,
That was great.
all righty. Now, let's see, I'm looking at the agenda. Oops. And on the agenda is number 4, the new business school budget workshop, and I just wanted to, I added it to the agenda. I wanted everybody to be aware of the meeting that we did have, the workshop that we had last Thursday. Peter and I attended, Rich and Jackie attended. And we started out with a presentation by Brooke Clancy, of the basic information regarding the whole kit and caboodle of education. And then the principal of the high school spoke, and then the principal of the middle school spoke. Then we broke for dinner in the cafeteria. And then we all separated into the different elementary schools. So those of us that were from Eastham went to a separate room and discussed the elementary school budget with Bill Crosby, the principal, and the Wellfleet people went to their room, Brewster went to their room, et cetera, et cetera. I did, pull up the information that we passed out. I just wanna say that, I'm sorry, Peter, that all of the information from the regional standpoint is not known at this point, only because they haven't put everything together yet. And so they're still waiting for some information. So at the moment, and it's sort of silly to tell you that it's what the increase is or isn't, because it's not complete as far as the regional costs are concerning. What we did have, as a result of meeting with with Bill Crosby on the elementary school, again, that's not complete either. But at the moment, it is up, they're calling it version 2. With another versions to come. And at the moment, their updated budget for fiscal year 26 for the elementary school is up 6.16%. That's obviously more than what we had hoped. We were aiming for 3. So, I don't know if you'd like to comment further, Peter or Rich, on.
I was gonna say the big 2 pieces that were not part of the discussion, which is hard to do. I mean, one of them we could have talked about, but can only do so much in a period of time. But the revenues is a key issue. Per pupil aid, for the minimum per pupil aid did increase, so that's a positive for us. But as far as revenues go, I think we're gonna see a decline in revenues on a net basis because of enrollments from Provincetown and Shore where we get paid tuitions just continue to drop. So I think that's gonna put a challenge on the budget, even though their expense budget might come in relatively attractive, close to the 3%. If revenues are down, their local revenues, non-property tax revenues are down, the assessment goes up. And speaking to the assessment, the other thing that I gotta get a handle on, probably within the next week or so, is the enrollment issue and how we be assessed. It's a little bit of a question. I'm not sure why. But I'll resolve it the next week or so. If our participation in the district last, what was that, about 1.5 Peter, last year, that our participation increased, which generated about $500,000, I think it was, of additional assessment. So even if the budget is perfectly level funded and you had no increase, but your participation changes a couple points, your assessment goes up and somebody else's goes down, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the challenges we're gonna have.
And our state will slightly for FY.
So, I am gonna follow up, with the elementary school probably next week. So I'll let you folks know if one of you can join me.
I think there's a meeting on the 14th.
And well, independent of the meeting.
Oh.
I'm gonna meet separately with our elementary school, they'll come over. And, also I want Giovanna, I wanna meet with her. One of the things, and this has been Jerry's question for a while, that they talked about, lining up their staffing to what does that mean for classrooms and number of children in those classrooms. And they said that they were working on something like that. And so I want to talk to Giovanna about that and perhaps get a draft of that, non-public draft of that. To see that's gonna be meeting what our needs are, as far as information. So then we don't get to the end and it's not quite what we're looking for, among other issues. I think there's some opportunities, especially on how we process information, bills and things like that at the elementary school level through the region office. That we can make some improvements. So I want to start that conversation with Giovanna.
So, well, we're still waiting, as I said and Rich said, we're still waiting for some information to finalize everything. We don't have final numbers.
I did, I just could have mentioned that, but I'm talking schools, so I might as well mention it.
I'm sorry?
We're talking schools, so I might as well mention it here. I just did get just this morning, a preliminary from Cape Cod Tech.
Oh, yeah, we haven't seen any, we didn't see anything from Cape Cod Tech at this
So
meeting.
I'll forward that to everybody, and that's good news. Our participation in the tech has dropped, so our assessment will be dropping for both operations and debt. And their budget is pretty, so up for them, up quite a bit, but it's a relatively small number for us. But the net is less than what I put in our budget. So you'll see an adjustment for that. So right now, we're actually municipal budget outside of the Nauset district and elementary school is less than a 3% increase, even with all the new debt that I've done. And that it will be, might as well say it now, talking instead of my report, but another adjustment, we just had a meeting on wastewater update on funding through SRF and perhaps USDA. And of course, USDA being a federal agency, everything that we had been working on is now going to be restarted. So I had put in this year's budget a significant amount of debt service related to the water project for closing it out through a USDA, and we are going to have to reapply. We're still hopeful that we're going to get that funding, but it's definitely it won't happen before July 1. So I need to reconsider that, and I put in the budget $600,000, thinking we'd be borrowing the full 12 million bucks. We won't be doing that. Be something
But
much
you're
less.
putting it there.
But I'm gonna adjust that downwards because I know, so why would I budget for it and I know it's not happening? I don't wanna charge people the taxes for that when I know it's not happening. So that'll be an adjustment I'll be making. So maybe next meeting or the following meeting, I will give you an update on some of the things that you've already looked at, how it impacts the overall operating budget summary that goes to town meeting.
So that's good news on Cape Tex, from Cape Tech.
Yeah.
Were there any questions on the workshop that we attended last Thursday? So I'm going to the agenda. And you mentioned, I'm on number 5A, you mentioned wastewater.
Yeah, so capital project committee meetings coming up next week. I think that will be a good meeting because we have some update on SRF. And like I said, the USDA, actually we have good news on wastewater through USDA, so want to brief the committee on that. Of course, we'll have OPM and design updates. But the other thing that's on my agenda for the capital projects committee and for the finance committee and for the select board, and then once we got all those folks covered, the community at large is have a draft. I want to start talking about a funding plan for wastewater. So I want to roll that out to the capital projects committee and to the committees and start that discussion. The multi-pronged, multiple revenue sources to meet, you know, the increase in debt service. And the good news is I think it's looking really attractive that, you know, it'll be impactful. But it's definitely doable. And I think it will allay a lot of people's concerns about the cost of this. Lots of things have to fall in line though. So, and that's the discussion one. Anyway.
I'm looking at number 5B, and it's the school facility, and if I remember correctly, Jackie has said the RFP has gone out for the
There's
facility.
no update on.
There's no update
5B
other than
or
the-
C really.
What's the timing for the response on the RFP, do you know?
I don't know.
No, okay, I didn't know when we should hear something on that. And the regional school agreement, you're on it?
No
update.
meetings, no update.
Because they wanted to get that done within a 3-month period.
No, yeah, I actually talked to Peter Lombardi, who says that Brewster, they're waiting for Brewster to put some things together, and he learned that I was the bad guy that wrote all the stuff for Eastham. But he also said that he thought that they might try and delay for the new superintendent, and I noticed that they just
He's been selected.
He's been selected and so forth, so it may go. But I think right now the committee, Jackie and Peter and I are on it. There's no date yet for a first meeting, but we'll have to be doing it. You know, it clearly wasn't going to be anything for this town meeting. Let's hope we get it started so we can have it ready for a town meeting in May of 2026.
Okay. Does that mean that we will be using the statutory or the alternative or this year's cost?
I don't know, did you hear anything on that, Rich? I mean, it's still, I think the committee can
That-
still recommend something different.
The school committee, I'm assuming, will do what they did last year and send out the assessment based on the statutory method.
It was
But it's
statutory.
not their decision, it's a local decision for each town. So we'll have to talk to the other towns and see what their appetite is for the alternative. And if they have an appetite for it, then we'll have to get together and say, yep, we're all doing this, and we'll have to have an article at town meeting to do that.
Because I think that last year, because we went to the statutory versus the alternative, it cost us $51,000.
That's right.
Could be different this year. You'd have no idea.
Right. Is there anything else that anybody wishes to bring up under old business? And I did not receive any town manager report from Kayla, from this past select board meeting, so I didn't pass anything out.
No, the only other update I think we'd have on that at this point is Jackie and I and Amy Ekman did attend the Part-Time Resident Association's meeting.
Yeah, that was last night.
And gave them an update on the master plan, wastewater, housing. And Amy talked about her decision regarding the residential tax exemption. So,
How did it go?
amazing. Everybody left happy.
Everybody left happy.
That is great. Congratulations, Rich, because we were worried about that.
I might be a little.
Yeah, right. I'm not sure.
Rosen.
I think you're being a little rosy.
Amy said it was a tough crowd. And for her, that was what it would be anyway, yeah.
Right, right.
I listened to it. I'm a member of it. It was not contentious.
No,
I'm not happy, but, it was not, the thing went really well.
Well, Tom did come to the select board meeting, and was not very happy with the situation and gave his thoughts on that matter. Let's put it that way.
Mary, I think the A team attended, though. I mean, if you've got Amy and you've got Jackie, and we had a person from the search committee where if people sort of raised up prickly voices, well, if you want a voice, there are many committees and boards in town where you can have a voice, just apply, and we'll be happy to interview you. So we'll see.
Okay. So do I have a motion to adjourn? Fred, do I have a second?
Sure.
Patty? All in favor of adjourning? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Our next meeting is next Thursday. It's February 13th. It's again at 4 o'clock. And it's going to be on the police and the dispatch. That's on the agenda for next week.